Hopefully you guys all heard that it was recording. So
Okay, got it.
Lauren, go ahead.
As
evening,
everyone knows,
everyone.
Lauren is running for city council, and so is the April team.
Okay.
We were going to have a regular meeting at the Fleetwood, sorry, at the Riverside Memorial Chapel, but being as Petite's team, the other guys were not able to make it, we figured it'd be easier just to have one person. Now we have two to have it a Zoom. So let's hear where we are, and we have the candidate on 11D from the Working Families Party. Lawrence, all yours.
Great. Thank you, John. And thank you, everyone, for being here on such a short notice. Thank you, FCS, for hosting this event. My name is Lauren Carter. I am a candidate for City Council here in the city of Mount Vernon. I'm a Democrat. I'm running on the Working Families Party line. I've been endorsed by the Working Families Party, and I'm on row 11D. I'm running because I believe I'm the best one for the job. We need experience right now in the city of Mount Vernon. As you all know, we are facing numerous challenges, and we need people that really know what to do. They know how government operates, particularly Mount Vernon, knowing the charter, the code, and even the rules of the state like GML, GCL, et cetera. And I'm that person. I have a track record of being able to work well with internal and external teams. And I also have a track record of working in the community since I was a teenager, volunteering at various organizations and food pantries, et cetera, even visiting the elderly and the ill in nursing homes and at hospitals, although we know because of COVID, there has been a pause on that for a year and a half now. And I just want to help the city of Mount Vernon. I am not accepting donations from lobbyists or developers or any other type of special interest groups. And I chose to do that. That's one of the reasons why the Working Families Party endorsed me. And I chose to do that because I want to be beholden to the people when I get into office. I believe that the voices of the people need to ring louder than the voices of the special interest groups. And I believe that that's why we're experiencing some of the problems we're experiencing, because it's the other way around. The people's voices have been drowned out by the special interest groups. Just quickly, as I wrap up, I was born and raised here in the city of Mount Vernon. And quite frankly, that's one of the reasons I'm running again, because this is the worst I've ever seen it, the worst condition, the worst state of the city that I've ever seen it. After completing high school here, I went on to NYU, would later finish at Fordham. And I'm almost done at USC. I'm at one of the top planning programs, one of the top public policy schools in the country, finishing my master's in planning. So I'm excited to be here today to answer your questions and looking forward to it tonight.
Excellent.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you very much. And we have a surprise guest. Ed, you're always welcome.
Thank you, John.
The FCA. We welcome everybody, and I'm sorry that they said you couldn't make it. Otherwise I would put your name on it. Ed, I'm sure you want to say a few words. There really isn't a time limit, but keep it not too long.
Sure, I will be brief. Fleetwood Citizen Society, thank you for having this forum. My running mates, Daniel Brown and Caitlin Gleason, both had scheduling conflicts, which is why at first we said that we couldn't make it, but I definitely know how important you are. So we wanted to make sure we were here on this evening. I want to thank first County Executive George Lattimore, Assemblyman Pretlow, Chairman Reginald Lafayette, Senator Jamal Bailey, Mayor Sean Patterson, Mayor Ernie Davis, County Legislator Tyree Woodson Samuels for all backing our candidacy. But most importantly, that I want to thank the people of Mount Vernon that voted us in to win the Democratic primary on June 23rd. And I'm happy that their voices were heard because they voted for change and something new. None of us were experienced politicians. We had never run for public office before. So obviously they heard our message, which is why we won the Democratic nomination on June 23rd. Why am I running? I'm running and anyone that listens to me knows this, I believe that Mount Vernon is the jewel of Western. We have the best access to transportation in the region. We have 70 people from 70 countries that live in our city. We have the greatest diversity in the county. But our reputation, if you look at News 12, says something different. But I know we are the jewel of Westchester. We are the diamond in the rough. But what does it take to make a diamond? It takes pressure. You take a lump of coal and put it under extreme pressure. And that's what we're facing in Mount Vernon today, is pressure with our broken sewage system, with our city employees that don't have contracts, with lack of services for youth and seniors here. And you need elected officials that can deal with pressure. Daniel Brown, basketball star, came back home to start a small business and to help her community. Caitlin Gleason has been giving back to Mount Vernon for decades. And myself, I understand pressure. Grew up in subsidized housing, had a short career on Wall Street, was also a fellow for the state, working on economic development activities in the 90s. I am an adjunct professor at Columbia and have had a career in both planning and affordable housing for decades. I have studied plans for cities from Baltimore to Buffalo, and even wrote a book about it. So I'm running because I fully believe that Mount Vernon is the jewel of Westchester. And you have to have skilled people in the right seats, in the leadership positions to move our city forward. So John, thank you so much for this invitation. And I'm happy on the last minute's notice that I can make it here.
So John stepped away for a second, so I'm just going to jump
Okay.
in. Folks, you can send a chat or raise a hand, and you can ask one of the candidates a question, and I will unmute. John, I'm going to unmute you. Your phone rings, so. Go ahead, John. Unmute. John, you're still muted.
John, you're on mute.
John, mouse over by the bottom left corner, and then click on the mute.
Yeah. So,
There you
I
go.
don't know
All
how I got
right.
on there,
Yeah,
'cause I didn't mute it.
yeah, I had
Okay.
your phone rang. I had to do that. Sorry.
Yeah, you made it because I'm on the phone. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, now I understand. I am unmuted. One of the questions that I received was the city does not have a comprehensive plan, at least not an updated one. Yet the city council continues to discriminately accept residential rezoning petitions, over a dozen to date, with no considered giving for the public. We here in the feel there is more than enough people living in this 4 square miles. The long range impact is really hurting the city. What is your position on continue to accept petitions for residential rezoning absence of this plan? And what would you do specifically to recommend a policy moving forward until a plan is in place? Okay, Lauren, please.
Okay, thank you for the question. We absolutely need to update our comprehensive plan. I just don't know why it hasn't been started. I mean, so many people run on this for years, and it hasn't been done. We can allocate funds to complete the plan. We'd have to hire some consultants, and we can start working on the plan as early as February, once we have the budget in place in January, and start working in February, having a steering committee, et cetera. And my position right now on development in the city, I know that during the primary, I said that I was not in favor of a moratorium because I felt that projects could be reviewed while the comprehensive plan was being completed. But I haven't seen any movement on the comprehensive plan. More so, however, with all of the storms that we've had. I mean, we had 2 storms back to back within 10 days, I believe it was, right? July to August. And we're experiencing these storms because of, we all know, because of climate change. So we're not because these were 100-year storms. And 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, projects weren't being built, infrastructure wasn't being built to address these 1 in 100-year storms. But now they're coming more frequently, and we need to make sure that we are building resiliently. In addition, overdevelopment. It's not just climate change, but it's overdevelopment that is causing the impacts that we are seeing because of these storms. Our infrastructure has not been addressed in Mount Vernon particularly. I do know in other places as well, because of overdevelopment, they are seeing flooding, increased flooding. So at this time, I would say that we should implement a moratorium for at least 6 months in order to get that comprehensive plan started. Applications can still have a certain level of review. We need to get the public involved because it'll be your plan. Don't let anyone fool you. It's your plan. You have to be involved. And we need to revisit some of the zonings that have been put in place. Now, I just wanted to say this quickly. Once the comprehensive plan is prepared and adopted by the city council, there has to be the corresponding zoning also, because then we will know what is allowed or permitted in certain zones and what is restricted in certain zones. So it's more than the comprehensive plan. You also have to have the zoning in place as well. And these are things that we need to do. I'm committed to getting it done. I want to make sure that we have the funding and put pressure on the administration to make sure that they have the people in place, the planning commissioner, et cetera, and hiring consultants so that you all can give your input on the plan.
So are you in favor of the moratorium? You just said two different things. You said that originally you would think about putting it, now you said that you may do it for 6 months. Now, if there's no comprehensive plan in 6 months, which I doubt if there will be because there hasn't been one in years, why 6 months? There's stuff going up here all over Mount Vernon, which is going up, it seems haphazardly. Everyone is upset about what's happening in Mount Vernon. I can look out my window, there's a building that's been being built for the past 3 years, and it looks like it's never going to get done, 42 West Broad Street.
Yes.
There's going to be another building they tore down two family houses, and they're planning to put in 42 units. I mean, they don't seem to have any control of what they're just doing it because they're getting money from these contractors, and this has got to stop. So when you're saying that you're going to put a moratorium for 6 months, but there's no comprehensive plan, what's that going to do? We need a comprehensive plan before we start any building. Now, would you stop the building, try to stop the building without a comprehensive plan?
Let me be clear, Rob. Thank you. Maybe I wasn't clear. I don't mean, I hope I didn't say two different things. I don't think I did. What I said is initially during the primary, I said that I was not in favor of a moratorium. I said now, because of the storms we have seen, we're seeing record-breaking flooding. One, because of climate change, but number two, because the infrastructure cannot resist or then it's not being built to be resilient to these storms. So because of the factors that we've seen since after the primary, I am now in favor of a moratorium until we get, now the comprehensive plan shouldn't take long. We have a draft plan in place. It shouldn't. Professional planners can get it done in 12 months. It shouldn't take long. Mount Vernon just drags things out. Everything doesn't have to be this difficult. Every other community has a plan every 10 years. We can get it done but we just have to make sure we have consultants and we have to have the money. Now, if we don't have the money, because I know Mount Vernon is financially stressed because of the ARP monies we got, that saved us because Mount Vernon was going to run out of money before the end of this year. But if we cannot afford to allocate monies to complete the plan, we need to get grants to do it. And it's possible. You just got to have the people in office that really want to do it, know how to get it done, and don't have ulterior motives. I hope I was clear this time for you, Rob.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But how would you go about doing that? How would you actually, if you're one person in the city council trying to stop what's going on in Mount Vernon? I mean, can one person stop the bulldozing? What's happening here?
You're right. One person can't do it. That's why the community has to get involved. It's not enough for residents here to vote for officials. You have to stay on top of them to make sure that the work is getting done, especially whatever they promised. So I would need you all, the people, to make sure that your voices are heard. That's why I said the voices of the people need to be ringing louder than the voices of the special interest groups. The reason we're not seeing the things that you just mentioned and what we require or what we request is because it's the other way around. We have to make sure that the people are involved, that the people are engaged, that you're demanding better from your officials. That's how it's going to get done. Now, just to be clear, the council does not start the comprehensive plan process. The mayor runs the day-to-day. The council appropriates funding. So that's why I said, let's get the funding in place. Once the funding is there, now the budget should be being worked on right now. As a matter of fact, we should be having a public hearing in the next few weeks. The Board of Estimate and Contract should be having a public hearing in the next few weeks, per the charter. We have to make sure that they have appropriated monies to finish the plan. And if our officials are saying that we can't afford it, then we need to get grants ASAP. But we have to get this plan completed. It's unacceptable. We have to have a company, and not just I don't want to take up too much time. Maybe I've spoken too much. I know Ed is
No,
here.
it's fine. This is something that's, I think, on a lot of people's minds. It's happening all over Mount Vernon, and it's the overcrowding is getting crazy.
Because Mount Vernon has not been planning for anything. We don't have an economic development plan. We don't have, first of all, first and foremost, we need a strategic plan. What are our goals for the city of Mount Vernon? And how are we going to budget for the goals for the next 3 to 5 years? We don't do this here, and it's unacceptable. Everything has been willy-nilly in Mount Vernon, has been reactionary. We haven't been proactive, and that's the position we need to take. I mean, these are things that I remember saying these things when I was working for the city. I was like, where's our strategic plan? But now that I'm at one of the top public policy schools, I'm learning more about how we can implement it, how to get it done. So I'm bringing the experience and the background, the educational background, to the council. And as you said, I would just be one vote, but I need the people to stay on top of the officials to get it done.
Ed, do you want to make any comment towards that?
You asking me, John?
Yes, Ed.
Sure, I have a few comments. I agree with Lauren that developers have been raping the city of Mount Vernon too long. Let me say that one more time. Developers have been raping the city of Mount Vernon for too long. It makes no sense that we listen to their plans and bend over backwards for their plans without saying, here's our plan. And we want you to build within the confines that we give you. That's why we see haphazard development in our city, because it benefits developers, but it doesn't benefit the city of Mount Vernon. Our comprehensive plan was last done in the 60s. It's about 50 years old. And we have a draft that was done in 2011 that needs to be ratified. I have a very clear, precise plan for how we would move forward. Our comprehensive plan in totality should take from 12 to 18 months. In the first 6 months, we can actually finish the technical aspects of that plan. But what's important is that this plan is for the people and the citizens of Mount Vernon. Therefore, the outreach that we would have to do, every church, every neighborhood association, every barbershop, we would go everywhere to let people know what's here and to get their input on the comprehensive plan. Why? Because this plan can't be something that comes from City Hall. It has to be something that comes from the people. And it's going to outlast whether Lauren wins, whether I win, whoever's the mayor, it'll outlast all of us. And so it has to be the people of Mount Vernon buying into that. pushing it and saying, City Hall, this is what we want.
Right,
So
you
what
did-
have
you
I
stay-
been doing?
you did stay to take about 18 months, you feel, but in that 18 months, I know Lauren said she will not, she want a moratorium. I would feel even if you stay within the zoning laws, you could build something, but your team, I think, do they want to continue building until that plan is finished?
To be clear, so I started off, John, by saying developers are raping our city, right? We have current zoning in our city, which was voted on by previous council members and presented to the public. So our belief is simply this. If a developer says we want to follow the rules that you currently have and build within your current zoning, fine. But once they say we want a rezoning, which many of them do, you would say, no, guys, wait, because we are no longer going to listen to your plans. We have to come up with our own plans and then figure out where you fit in.
Without any.
And so that's where we
policy.
differ. We
If the
wouldn't
plan-
have a
If the planning board
moratorium.
sends something to you that has powers involved, would you say no to that?
I'm sorry, John, can you come back in? I apologize.
Payment in lieu of taxes? If that's what they're going to get, would you say, no, we want you to pay your fair share of taxes?
So to be clear, a rezoning is different than a pilot, but we can talk about pilots too, right? We can definitely talk about pilots. Again, I'm going to say this one more time. Developers have been raping the city of Mount Vernon. So what does that mean? When they build their building, whatever services that they take from us, which is cost of the kids in school generated by their project, police services, fire, all those services, that has to be the minimum tax, period. Now, we can talk about a pilot above that number, but that's the baseline, right? Because that there's no reason to bring in a new project in our city if it's going to have a net cost to our city. So I have been in development for a long time, but it needs to benefit us and not the other way around. So what have I been doing over the past couple of months? We've met with the city of New Rochelle. We've talked to the city of Yonkers to figure out how they did what they did. Because in 2008, 2009, New Rochelle and Yonkers were in the same boat we were. But they had, last decade, a comprehensive plan. And they've been able to then start to plan out their communities in ways that we haven't. And not that we would copy their plan, right? Because there are aspects I don't like, but we can learn from what they did to be able to then do better here. One last thing, Rob, that you mentioned. I'm sorry, John.
I think we understand, and you sound very good. Now, we do have a question from the chat before I get to the questions on the email. Joe, you want to put that on?
But I'm sorry, John, that Rob mentioned something. Could I just go back to what Rob mentioned?
Okay.
And I'm sorry, guys, I'll be brief.
Please.
The reason why we are running as a slate is actually very important. One city council member can't do a whole lot, but 3 can, because 3 out of 5 makes the majority of city council. So if you can collaborate at the council level, then collaborate with your mayor, you can actually push things forward. So versus saying something, you can actually do something if there's collaboration. And that's what we believe that we bring to the table. It's just a different model where now it's collaboration going forward and not just speaking off the cuff about what you would like to do.
Okay, let me ask you, Ed, if you don't mind, if nobody minds that I'm taking up this whole thing here. If the 3 of you are together, are the 3 of you agreeing with all the building that's going up? The two family houses, there were two family houses here that they're now going to make it into a 42-unit building. Do you agree on that?
No.
Because that's you don't agree with that.
No, as I said earlier, developers have been raping Mount Vernon, period. That has to stop now. And so that stops by coming up with a comprehensive plan or telling developers you can build within our zoning, but if you are building outside of our rezoning, you have to wait till you come up with our plan. So no, I don't agree with any developer that's building in a way that doesn't benefit us, period.
Hey, Ed, just to be clear.
And you are a contractor, and this is the way you feel. That's good. Of course, 3 people don't always agree on everything at all. If you had another person, you could still get that 3 to 2. Hopefully, you get 4 to 1, and if you're able to convince the other one, have a great majority. But certainly the city council does need three votes, absolutely.
John, can I
Before
ask,
I go to my computer here with the other questions, Joe, you said there was one in the chat?
I see Leslie wants to say something.
yes, I just want some clarity from Ed regarding, because one thing you mentioned, Ed, was that if it's currently zoned for it, then it's as of right, which is clear and true. And if it's not, if they need a variance or rezoning, then you would say slow down a bit, which I agree. However, based on what we have now in TOD Weston area, TOD West, the city council has approved the form-based zoning for that zone. They claim that all the development that's planned there will have no impact on that zone, no traffic impact, no school impact, no parking impact, quality of life impact. Do you agree with that assessment? Do you agree that all these, 2-3 family homes that are being taken down right now in that zone, now getting 150, 250 unit buildings, will not make any additional cumulative impact in that area?
Yeah, so Leslie, that's a very good question. And it's a very similar question to what's happening on 3rd Street too, with the MX1 zoning. What should have happened, and I'm not on council, so I'm not sure if that happened. You should have had a traffic study, right? You should have had a shadow impact study, and other studies by professionals to then figure out what those impacts are. So the short answer is, Leslie, I'm not sure, because we should have those studies that we can all share and see and say, well, what is the traffic impact study for what's happening on the Mount Vernon West side? So if we have access to that, then we can figure out where we are. If there haven't been studies done, then that's a problem, because we should actually have those studies available to us.
Well, the studies have been done. I don't trust the studies because you can't tell me that when you replace a small manufacturing facility that had 15 employees and now you put 250 units there, that it's going to have the same impact to the sewers, to the traffic, to the parking. I don't care what your experts say. Maybe one building won't, maybe two, but 3, 4, 10, 20, you're going to tell me that there's not going to be any impact? This city was built on infrastructure from 50 to 100 years ago. You cannot tell me that this same infrastructure is good now for 10 to 20 years from now. In my neighborhood, we had a huge flood twice back in late July, and also just Ida, which I believe was in September, that completely flooded out nearly 11 to 12 homes in the neighborhood. One home had about 13 feet of water in it, completely ruined, probably lost about 3 or 4 cars in the neighborhood as well. And that was all because of runoff water from the school district, impervious surface in the parking lot, also the rooftop, and also water coming down from California Road, because there's only one storm drain that runs from California Road all the way down through the school, down Audubon Avenue, Stuyvesant Plaza, down to the Cross County. It's a 3-foot diameter storm drain. It wasn't meant to handle 100-year storms. However, 100-year storms now are annual storms, right? So this is the type of infrastructure that we're working with. So if we don't, let's say, take our foot off the pedal, if we don't take a pause to reevaluate everything that's going on, cumulative impact from development, climate change, so on and so forth, we are driving in the fog, and we don't know if there's a brick wall in front of us or if there's a cliff. Which way, what I want to ask you is, would you want to reevaluate the transit-oriented development for Mount Vernon West to make sure that we can't do a better job than what is currently done now?
Right. I mean, why wouldn't we? Right. So if there were studies done, let's bring back those consultants who did those studies. Let's have public hearings and really dive in and say, okay, here's what you recommend. Why? Here were realities that we see in our city. Are they covered in your study? Did you do a thorough job? And please speak to all of us as to what you think about the issues, Leslie, that you just brought up. It is crucial because what's important is you can only build on land once. So as you build, you have to be very careful about what you put there. So sure, we should take all the care necessary to make sure that if we move forward with that Mount Vernon West plan, that it is for the benefit it is for the benefit of our city.
So that means.
Okay,
we would
okay.
be-
We have some other questions from the chat. I don't want this to just go back and forth, and I have to jump in here because the chat's getting quite full. We have a question from Shauna Holmes, and that's pretty good for me. How do you plan on assisting seniors? Are you going to put a plan in place to ensure senior buildings are up with code and have things like ventilation systems and safe elevators? Then we can start with Lauren and then go to Ed.
Well, I believe that we definitely needs more services for our youth and our seniors. We see that the Armory has been closed down, leaving one senior center, the Dole Center, is unacceptable. We don't have much for our youth. So I believe that we need to work collaboratively, not just with officials in the city of Mount Vernon, but with nonprofits and private sector companies to make sure that we have the services here that we need. Now, with regard to, I'm looking at the question, senior buildings, every building that's built in the city or the state for that matter, has to be built according to code. So it's up to the inspectors, the building department inspectors, to make sure that that the contractors are building according to code. And certainly that is absolutely important, Shauna. Thank you for the question. But it is something that is already required by the code of the state of New York and the International Building Code, which Mount Vernon has adopted. So if there are seniors who are experiencing those problems now, certainly you can reach out to me or even to the buildings department so that an inspector can go in and ascertain what the conditions are. I hope I've answered your question.
Ed?
Shauna, just if I can share a story with the group, we were campaigning in May. We were in a senior building, knocking on doors. That's what politicians do. And we were on the 6th floor, I think, of a senior building. And that building didn't have a working elevator for 7 days. The seniors were trapped in their building for 7 days. So one of the things that we have to do as council members, we have a lot of laws on the books, but we have to beef up the enforcement of those laws in our city. The laws are meaningless if they aren't enforced. And I was personally disgusted with that senior telling me, yeah, well, I can't leave here because I can't walk up and down those stairs and I'm trapped here. So we have to make sure our buildings department has the correct resources to, again, go after bad characters, bad apples, and bad landlords who aren't treating our seniors effectively. So great to have those codes, but we got to beef up the enforcement of those codes in our city.
Let's go to a question from the email and then we'll go back to the chat, okay?
All right, sounds good. All yours, John.
The New York State Coalition on Open Government has criticized the city for not making information to the public available in a timely manner, both before and after public meetings. What is your position on improving the transparency in this government, especially with the regard of making information on matters of city council and other city boards, agencies available to the public prior to them making the decision? What specific recommendations as a policy to improve this process? Lauren, want to start?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, thank you, John. Well, I will say that it sounds like that maybe that has occurred recently, because when I was working for the city, whether it's as deputy clerk or in the planning department, I made sure that notices were posted within the required time frame. It sounds like that's not the case now. What needs to be done, first of all, we need good planning. And I don't mean land use planning. We need to plan properly. So what council members need to do is when scheduling a public hearing on an item, factors need to be taken into account, such as when is the next meeting? Are we going to have enough time to get the notice in the paper, on the website, et cetera? These are discussions that we had when I was deputy. And as deputy, and when the clerk was there, we would guide the council and say, listen, you're not going to have enough time to have the meeting on this particular day because we don't have enough time to put the notice in the paper. So these are things that the staff needs to be aware of, but certainly the council members can make sure that it's done by staff members. So as a council person, I would make sure that meetings first and foremost are going to be scheduled in the appropriate time frame, giving staff enough time to handle what they need to handle, make sure their due diligence is done. We also need to increase public participation in Mount Vernon. The days of having a notice in the paper and doing a mailing, those days are in the past right now. We're living in a new world right now, and we really need to make sure that we are having notices even put out. In addition to the website, we can use social media as well. We don't have to just use our website, but we can use Facebook and Twitter to also put out meeting notices. Now, we have to make sure that the minimum requirement is done per the law, which would be the newspaper and a mailing and the website, but we can do more. That doesn't mean we can't do more. We don't have to be limited to what the state requires us. We can increase outreach, and we need to increase outreach and participation in Mount Vernon. So those are some of the things that I would like to do as a council person to make sure that the people are aware and involved.
Thank you, Lauren. I want to commend Councilwoman Duarte, actually, and Chief of Staff Darren Morton. They've worked, at least for the past year, on coming up with a open gov system. So next year it should be implemented where as the legislation from council, even our budget, will now be online. And so everyone will be able to go to the city's website next year and be able to see in real time legislation being passed and the budget process as it works out. But like Lauren said, that's not enough. As we campaigned and met with thousands of citizens, they told us, right, we feel that City Hall isn't transparent. So we can use and should use social media. But even beyond that, when we met with seniors would tell us, I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram. So help us. Again, politicians do a good job of asking for your vote when it's election time. We have to also do a good job of being out there in the community. So I promised seniors when I met them, and I'll say that now, we will be back out there and probably every quarter, if not more often, meeting with seniors in their buildings, because they have a special issue where social media, even though we should do that, doesn't work for them. So yes, we should do it all. Have that open gov system where Councilwoman Duarte worked on, use social media where we can, and then go back, especially to seniors, and talk to them and let them know what's happening by mailings or posters in their residences.
Joe, you want to go back to the chat?
Sure thing. The next question was from Lauren P. Razor. Forgive me if I'm saying the name wrong. Do you know the status of the EPA lawsuit by the federal prosecutor? And this is to anyone, Lauren. Sorry.
Lauren, did you hear the question?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Joe.
Yep.
It's my understanding that the latest information that I have is that Mount Vernon was facing fines. So let me just go back so that people are aware. The EPA lawsuit, Environmental Protection Agency, is suing the city of Mount Vernon for polluting the waterways. And the department, because Mount Vernon has not put a plan in place and followed through on that plan, the Department of Justice started a lawsuit, and the judge ruled that the city of Mount Vernon should be fined. Now, I do know at some point during a previous administration, there was a plan in place that was approved by the EPA and work had commenced. It appears that that work must have stopped and maybe that plan was not being followed. So the federal government moved forward with a lawsuit against us. I will say this, it's not that difficult. If we have the right people in place that know what to do, it's not that difficult. Now, Mount Vernon, what we need to do and what was offered to us by the federal government and by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation is for us to be able to get grants so that we can pay for a lot of the repairs that are needed so we can come into compliance. What Mount Vernon has to do to get these grants, particularly from the EPA or HUD, is Mount Vernon has to open up the books of the Urban Renewal Agency, which Mount Vernon, for some reason, does not want to do. We're hurting ourselves. We're hurting the people here in Mount Vernon. What are we hiding? Open up the books of the URA, because no one is just going to give us money. They want to see if we go apply for a mortgage, we have to provide our social. So there's a credit check. They want to know how much we have in our account, how much we have saved for down payment. This is standard operating procedure. We have to make sure that the EPA wants to make sure that Mount Vernon has its books in order. So let's open up the books of the URA so that we can get the grants that we need, because the DEC is not pleased with this, because it was also stated that if Mount Vernon did not do its due diligence to make sure that we are correcting these issues, that they would have to bring in a federal monitor. The EPA would have to bring in a federal monitor because Mount Vernon is not doing the job. Now, the DEC, I was told, absolutely does not want a federal monitor here, because we would be the first municipality in the contiguous states to have a federal monitor in order to make sure that we're correcting the issues by the EPA. It's unacceptable. Open the books, Mount Vernon, of the URA so we can get the funds we need, we can get the grants, because the federal government, they don't want to hurt us. They just want to make sure that the work is done. The Bronx River Parkway is being polluted. The Hutchinson River Parkway is being polluted. Let's make sure that we get the work done. That's my understanding on the latest with regard to the EPA lawsuit. I'm willing as a council person to sit down with the administration. But there are a lot of other ideas that I have that we can address this issue and come into compliance.
I believe the administration of Mayor Sean Patterson Howard is currently working on a plan to satisfy this environmental issue. But this points to a bigger issue, which we've talked about the comprehensive plan. That's one aspect of how we need to move forward. We also have to have a capital plan, right? Because we have, from our sewage system to our firehouses to our police stations, many of our city facilities have not been kept up and need millions of dollars to pump into it. How do we get there? We haven't had audits in several of our divisions for several years now. Thank God we have Reverend Darren Morton coming in, thank God, coming in as our comptroller. And I recently had a conversation with him just to say, okay, well, how do you plan to get out of this mess? And he's a very smart guy. So he's gonna literally figure out how to manage the fiscal year for 2022, but at the same time, make sure that we're wrapping up the books for previous years. Hopefully that can happen in the next 6 months once he gets in, and possibly looking at floating bonds, not in 22, but in 23. So in 22, if we come up with our capital plan for not just the sewage system, but for our city facilities, and then in 23, be able to then float bonds to then start paying for those items. it's not the answer we want to hear, right? Which is, let's get this fixed tomorrow. But that's the path forward. And as council members, we will move as quickly as he can to get these books wrapped up.
May I just add to that? Because even if all the audits are complete and the books are closed for all the previous years, Mount Vernon is not, the credit rating for Mount Vernon is not going to be restored in the next 6 months. It's just not going to happen. But like Ed said, we don't wait. There are other things we can do. I said before, there are grants that the EPA is willing to award to the city of Mount Vernon, the DEC, but we just need to open the books. So yes, while Chief of Staff Morton, soon to be Controller Morton, because he's running unopposed, is working on closing the books, we don't just wait, because it's going to take us a while to get our credit rating back. Now, we can still bond even without a credit rating. We would just have higher interest rates. No different than our own personal credit, right? If we had poor credit, we could still possibly borrow money to purchase a car or a home, but we would be paying higher interest rates. The same thing for Mount Vernon. So but we don't want to wait until we get our credit rating restored, because it's going to take some time. But in the meantime, we need to open the books of the URA so we can get the grants to start the process. Because the EPA and DEC, they're willing to help us.
All right, the next question from the chat, and then I'll turn it back to John. Would be from Talbot Thomas. The people need leadership and education, regardless of the position you might hold in the future. How would you plan to get the citizenry engaged? What key citizen groups might you employ in your efforts? Either of you can start.
I don't mind going first, Lauren, because you're taking all these questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, please, your turn to go first.
So politicians do a good job of reaching out for your vote when it's election day. We have to do an equally good job, and my running mate Caitlin Gleason says, of getting out there when there's not any election. And my running mates, Daniel Brown, Caitlin Gleason, and myself, we are committed to not just showing up to forums before a city council election, but really being out there and bringing a new model to how city council should operate. Yes, we pass legislation, but our job is to be the voice of the people. But we can't be the voice of the people if we don't listen to them, right? So one is listening and meeting with neighborhood associations on the north and south side, helping tenant associations form in areas like Ebony Gardens and Centennial Homes and Leicester Towers on the south side, because there's a whole lot of people living there too, as well as working with groups like FCS, TAL's organization, and any number of other neighborhood associations that are out there. Talking with churches. Again, we do a good job of going to a church during election time. Let's go back there in an off year just to talk about what's happening in City Hall. One of the biggest problems we have in Mount Vernon is apathy and lack of belief. We have great people in Mount Vernon. They just don't believe in city government. So we got to do our job double time and then get out there, get after it and say, listen, we're here, we're listening to you. So when we're voting on legislation, it's not about what Ed Poteet wants or Daniel Brown or Caitlin Gleason. It's about what the people of Mount Vernon want. And we can only figure that out if we're listening to them. So we have to go out, get after it, keep meeting with groups so that we can be better city council members.
The question is, how do we increase participation? Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. I also kind of alluded to it in a previous question. There are a lot of ways that we can increase participation. I mentioned good planning. First and foremost, making sure that whatever we're meeting about, number one, who are the stakeholders, the particular stakeholders that that this would pertain to? Are they is it senior citizens, business owners, et cetera, and conducting outreach with them. So there were many ways that were stated before. We have our traditional ways of public hearing notices by mail, and by newspaper. I mentioned social media. We can also door knock. These are other ways that we can have outreach, and looking to really give the people a voice in Mount Vernon. As I said before, your voices should be ringing louder, right? So for example, in New York City, they have something called participatory budgeting, where about 5% of New York City's budget, and they have a large budget, as we know, it goes out to the public for the public to state what they want in their particular neighborhood. And I think that that's something we need to bring to Mount Vernon. Maybe it would probably have to start with maybe 3% of our budget. But these are things that we can do to give people a voice, to make sure that they are getting what they want, as Ed said, in their communities. But they're also making the decision on it. So they are empowered. I think that these are some of the innovative things that we need to start incorporating here in Mount Vernon. We've been operating, as I said before, in a willy-nilly fashion, just being reactive to the challenges that we have here. And even when we have a challenge like the sewers, still not addressing it properly. We need to be proactive. We need to have a strategic plan in place. And we also need to make sure that the citizens have a voice and they also have a vote, not just at the ballot box. That's what I would like to do here in the city of Mount Vernon. It can be done. It's being done in other places.
All right, John, do you want to go back to your email
Before I ask the
questions?
question, though, I just want to make a statement. You talk about New York City. New York City has district leaders just as we do here in Mount Vernon. The last I heard when I lived in the Bronx is that district leaders actually had meetings with the people that lived in that district. And that's another way of communicating. Why it's not done here in this Mount Vernon city is beyond me. After all, I know we don't have council people that represent a certain area. They represent the whole city, which is different than New York City. But at least the district leaders should communicate with the people that live in that district and let them know what's happening, meetings or whatever it be. Anyway, the next question I have here in the computer is, what is your vision for protecting the environment and the green landscape? What is your understanding of the Mount Vernon Green Renaissance, if any? Who wants to take that first? Ed, go ahead.
Okay. The comprehensive plan, right?
No, we're talking about green space and the environment.
Sure.
And the Mount Vernon Green Renaissance.
Sure, of
green.
Of course.
Okay.
Yep, it's the comprehensive plan is a lot more than just where do we build buildings, right? Another large aspect of that is going to be what do we do with our green spaces? Right now we have probably 3 big parks. We have Hartley Park, we have Brush Park on the south side, and we have the 4th Street Playground in terms of significant green spaces in our community. Having a new comprehensive plan, if we're looking for more green spaces, again, that would be laid out in the comprehensive plan. What I'm excited about is it's been years, probably decades, since the people of Mount Vernon could have a say as to what they want to then see when their city grows up. And so this comprehensive plan process is going to be asking everyone, what type of city do you want in the 21st century, right? As we move forward, do you want one with a lot of dense buildings around transit-oriented sites? Do you want more green space? And so that's the type of outreach and public conversation that the comprehensive plan is going to drive. So it's really working on the comprehensive plan so we can figure out what the people of Mount Vernon want when it comes to development and green spaces in our city.
Yes.
I'll throw in one extra point. I already asked Ed, said if there's some land that the city owns of a tax, they haven't paid the taxes, if there's maybe 2 houses or 3 houses, I think we could take that land and actually take it off the tax rolls and make a park, either a green park or a playground for the kids. He said if the space is available, if there's enough space to do so, that he would consider it. I'll throw that at you as well, because you weren't aware of that.
So John, there's so much we can do, right? Which is when we have a plan.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ed. You said what you said, which is true, what you said, and I want to see what her opinion is
No
the same
problem.
or not. Okay?
No problem.
John, can you repeat the question? Because there was another
Okay,
part.
the question itself, go back to the question. Okay. What is your vision for protecting the environment and the green landscape? What is your understanding of the Mount Vernon green resistant? He said that we should put this into, which is right, into a master plan, but do you have any specific plans for the green space, for environment, and what do you know about the Renaissance?
Yeah. Well, Ed is right. You know, he's a planner. we both we both have like kind of the same background. It starts with the comprehensive plan. As he said, the comprehensive plan doesn't just address, you know, where we want to have our housing, but it's looking at also green space, open space, recreational activities and facilities, also our infrastructure. All of that is going to be addressed or should be addressed in the comprehensive plan. But the people did have a voice 10 years ago, Ed. So yeah, they got to, not as many people attended as we would have liked to have seen, but they had a chance 10 years ago. Definitely would like to see that participation increase this go around. Another thing we can do, we need community land trusts here in Mount Vernon, so that we can have dedicated land to the community. And I would also like to see, it's something that I said during the primary, we need to have more urban gardens here, community gardens, et cetera, because this leads the way not only to healthy eating for us, especially in urban areas, but it also provides green jobs, which is a growing market in places like Detroit. Because, you know, Detroit has suffered for decades, which we all know, and went through bankruptcy. They repurposed a lot of their vacant buildings and lots to urban farms and to urban gardens. So a lot of the youth in the community, you know, they were the horticulturalists, and they went on to places like Michigan State University to study horticulture and et cetera. And this is a growing field now as well. So I think that this is something that we also need to look at here in Mount Vernon, because every lot we have, every little bit of open space we have does not have to have a building on top of it. We definitely need open space. We need places for people to have recreation. So those are some of my thoughts.
I just don't quite understand. You're saying how the vegetable garden, used to call the VD garden at one point in time. What happens with the vegetables or fruit that is grown on the property? It's given to the homeless. It's given people. We sell it to make a profit. What happens to that?
Well,
first time I'm hearing this.
Well, for the residents of Mount Vernon, if Mount Vernon is maintaining the community garden, we don't have to charge people, because we would have people who are volunteers, who are gardeners and et cetera, growers in Mount Vernon. And this is something that they may want to do. So we don't necessarily have to charge for it, because people would be offering their services to maintain it. So
whoever grows the garden, they're the ones who reap the benefits.
No, it would be for the community. So the community would benefit from the garden.
Right, and within a square mile or so, or
no, all of Mount Vernon. All of Mount Vernon. If you want,
I don't think you're making enough food for that.
No, we had a couple of community gardens here in Mount Vernon, but there could be a schedule put in place. You know, certain residents from this particular area, they could gather, you know, the crops of this particular month, and then the next month another, you know, section of Mount Vernon. But we really need to think local. We really need to have more, not just urban gardens here, but also businesses. I mean, this is my thought. It's all a part of an economic development plan. So we need to also be able to incentivize businesses to come to Mount Vernon as well, because this will help our economy.
Okay, that's another question we have, which, oh, yeah, that, I guess it's workable. Sounds, it could be. There was another question about the other, but I'll let Joe, you have a number of people.
It could be for the schools. I mean, these are things that, again,
For the
it
lunch,
wouldn't
for the
just be
school,
as
for
a
the school
council
lunch?
person. Let us
That's-
ask the community, what do you want? Tell us.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
That sounds like a good plan, yeah.
So there is a direct question to each of you. A direct
Hello?
question to each of you, but it's 3 in a row. So I'm going to go in order. Darcy Miller asks Ed directly, yes or no, or residential pilots?
A residential what, Joe? I'm sorry.
Pilots.
I stated my position before, which is developments have to pay their own way. It's time for developers to stop raping Mount Vernon. So we have to figure out what the costs are to these projects specifically. How much do they cost our school system? How much do they cost our other public workers such as fire and police? That's the minimum that they would have to pay to the city. Once we figure out what the minimum is, and not guess at it, right? Actually figure out what those specific costs are, then we can talk about what benefits we can give back to the developer above that number. So what's been happening is that we kind of guess and say, well, give us this and what about that? What other municipalities do is they figure out what that economic cost is. That's the minimum tax, period. Because the days of developers raping our city are over. And so when development comes in, it has to be a benefit for Mount Vernon. Otherwise, why do we need them? And people want to be here. People are dying to be here. So we can set the stage for when development comes, here are the rules that you have to play by versus bending over backwards for anyone that shows up saying that I want to develop here in the city. And I would humbly say that I bring these skills necessary to make sure that that bargain, that negotiation goes in the benefit of the city.
So Ed, are you saying that you would be in favor of a development impact fee?
Yes, and that development impact fee, not just any fee, right? It needs to be based on actual cost. It's not what we feel like. It's what experts say. What's the cost to our school system? What's the cost to our police? What's the cost to our fire? What's that number? And then once we figure out what that number is, that's your impact fee, right? Again, developers want to come to Mount Vernon. I mean, granted, we've had issues in terms of lack of transparency, lack of consistency with city processes that we as council members have to fix. But once we fix those issues and bring stability back to city government, then the other side of that compromise is we've done our job in City Hall. We now have stable government. But if you want to come here, you have to play by our rules, not by yours. And our rules are an economic impact fee based on actual cost of what your project will cost our city.
All right, great. And then the question from Brenda Crump to Ms. Carter, she would like, what are some specific skills you would bring to the seat of city council?
Thank you, Mrs. Crump, for that question. Joe, can I just go back to the previous question? I didn't get a chance.
Sure.
to that
Sure,
one.
no, they were direct questions to each of you. That's why
Okay.
I said that.
Sure. I'm not in favor of pilots for residential development. I believe that pilots should be used for startup businesses, relocation assistance, et cetera, to bring in business in Mount Vernon, to bring in industry in Mount Vernon. I believe that's what the pilot should be used for. We need to grow our economy. We need to increase the tax base here. About 87% of our taxes come from property owners. It's unacceptable. We need to switch that equation. So I believe that pilots should be used to bring in economic development or businesses. But just know that the council does not vote on pilots. So you are aware, pilots are voted on by the Industrial Development Agency. I know the mayor's the chair. In past times, the controller would serve as the treasurer and the council president would be the vice chair. But that kind of changed throughout the years and the council no longer had a seat at that table, but they did remain on the Urban Renewal Agency board. And then there were 2 community members. So I think that I believe it was stated that the president is back on the IDA. I need to check that, but if not, that's something I would advocate for as a council person, that the council needs to have a seat at the table of the IDA. Absolutely. It shouldn't just be the mayor and the controller, but it also needs to be the council. And the president would represent the entire council or the will of the council, the majority of the council. And to answer Mrs. Crump's question, I'm sorry, can you repeat it, Joe?
Right, she just wanted to know what talents you would, specifically, she said, Ms. Carter, what are some of specific skills you would bring to the seat of city council?
Well, I would bring collaboration. As I said before, I have a track record of working well with internal teams and external teams. When I worked for the city, I was able to work with other departments, department heads, et cetera, and then also other government agencies, county, et cetera, state, et cetera, and even private industry stakeholders. So I have that track record. I bring also experience to the table, which is what we need in Mount Vernon. I've said it so many times before. If this was Scarsdale or Bronxville, where they don't really have many issues there, we could have everyone on their town board, their village board, to be people who don't have a background in government, or they wouldn't bring certain skill sets. But in this case, in Mount Vernon, the stakes are too high. The challenges are great, and we need to bring experience. I bring that to the table. I believe that I'm the best qualified person for council. That's why I've chosen to run. And I just wanted something Ed said earlier about the people spoke. The Democrats spoke in the primary. Now we have a general election where the working families, party members can vote, independents and unaffiliated voters can vote, Republicans can vote, everyone can now vote. So now we will hear from the people of Mount Vernon. And again, that goes back to what I said before about participatory budgeting or increasing participation in Mount Vernon, where we're not just hearing from a limited number of people. And even with the Democrats, we had about 10% that voted. Unacceptable. We have to increase participation here in Mount Vernon. We have to increase engagement. And that's what I would like to do as a council person. Thank you.
Okay, John, if you have, let's take one more question from the email and then.
Okay, I got 2 or 3, but let's just the simple one, because you touched on it. Start the economic development and a priority to our city. What specific steps would you take to recruit light industry, commercial operation, and distributing facilities within the city? It really is an ideal city for light manufacturing and delivery.
Okay, I guess I'll start this one.
Okay.
So first and foremost, we need a plan. The first thing, we have to draft an economic development plan. We cannot operate the city in just, I said it before, I'll say it again, a willy-nilly fashion. Just whatever comes our way, we accept it. No, what is our plan with regard to economic development? But no, I will advocate for this plan because remember, the mayor runs the day to day. We give the mayor the tools. We give the department heads the resources as council people on what they need in order to operate the business of the city. So number one, let's start with an economic development plan. We have to get the planning department properly staffed. That's where it's going to start. We have a part-time planner for a city of 70,000 minimum people. That's unacceptable. If you go to Yonkers, New Rochelle, they have a planning commissioner, a director, and then they may have 2 or 3 planners on staff. That's what we need in Mount Vernon. Our focus is misdirected, misguided. We need to properly staff the planning department. And what we can do, because like you said, we're strategically located off of 87 and 95. We're the only municipality in the county that has the access that we have. If we had a plan in place, perhaps we could have brought businesses in during the pandemic that were closed, had to close in New York City because of the shutdowns, which would have increased the tax base, provided employment opportunities for us, would have revitalized the economy in the areas that they serve. And we also need to use the tax incentives from the IDA. We need to do that. Now, we do have some things on the books. For example, there was a brownfield opportunity area that was a zone that was researched, I would say about 8 years ago. And the focus and the plan was to look at how we can increase commerce and on our waterway. Off of Fulton Avenue as you're going towards BJ's. That is something that was a grant that was given to us by the state of New York. We have a lot of plans on the table that have just collected dust because we haven't had the proper staff in the planning department to move these things forward. So that would be my approach, working with the administration to make sure we get these things off the ground. Utilizing, I said, first and foremost, an economic development plan, the IDA, the plans that we have already in place, and making sure the planning department is properly staffed.
Thank you for that question. I really do believe we need leaders in council, not just legislators. We have to have a different model for how council moves forward because we have issues in our city that need solutions, regardless of who's sitting in what seat. So what have I done? I, again, teach at Columbia and graduated from Hunter. So I've called both schools to commission studies on our actual industrial space in Mount Vernon. What type of vacancies do we have? Do we have 500,000 square feet of vacant space, 100,000 square feet, 50? That number matters because once we understand the data, right, how much vacant space that we have, then we can figure out how to market that space to the general public. The other thing that I would do in terms of generating economic development activities is simple. The city budget is $130 million. School budget, and my friend Darcy Mill is on the call here.
You're breaking up.
The school budget is $230 million a year. How much of that goes to businesses and people living in Mount Vernon? I'm not sure, but we should have rules on the books saying that for city funds, we're gonna encourage participation and give contracts to local businesses. What else would I do? When we're talking about the building of residential projects and the benefit to our community, right? And it's good to have a nice building, but what does it do for us? Those jobs, those construction workers should be coming from Mount Vernon, right? So nothing's stopping us from setting up a job training program to train folk that need work and have them work on those buildings that are coming up in our city and making sure that as we're working with smaller businesses in those projects, that a fair amount, that a fair share of contracts are going to MWBE businesses and local businesses. So there are things that as council members, we can push the mayor on and do ourselves to then generate economic development in our city. Amazon has shown us the days of stores coming to Main Street are probably over. It's really gonna be our growth is in warehouse and light industrial, and thank God we have that base in Mount Vernon. So let's figure out what that base is and then move forward, get those businesses in our city, and make sure when they come that they're hiring locally and working with small vendors, small companies, and MWBE companies in our city so that it benefits Mount Vernon.
Excellent. John, do you want to have a word?
You want one or two more questions, then the final statement?
Yes.
Okay. It has been reported that the city of Mount Vernon has 40% more of a population than the sewer system can handle. The sewer problems, I don't know if we touched on this before, the sewer problems have been ongoing for many years. Do you justify where the current city council is voting for these more apartment complexes? The city is already overwhelmed with massive infrastructure problems, and yet new developments are most likely and will get piles on top of the fact that we're building them that shouldn't be built. Who wants to take it?
I can dive in. I had a meeting with Commissioner Damani Bush from DPW a few months ago, talking about the sewage issue, and DPW, with very limited resources, is doing a fantastic job with the limited resources that they have. And they are moving forward, mostly on the south side, to address about 5 or 6 miles of sewers in our city. The problem is we have 100 miles of sewers in our city, and we right now don't understand the scope of the problem in our sewage system. So when new developments come in, where they are is important, because those developers should be forced to study the sewage system around where they are. Obviously in Mount Vernon, we're looking to grow, but we want to grow smart. So just to say we're not going to let any new developments in would hurt us, because we need tax revenue to come into our city. But we have to do it in a smart way to let developers pay for studies of the sewage system around where they are. If it's okay, well, then we know that. And if it's not, then say, okay, guys, here's your impact fee. If you're going to impact 2 miles of sewage systems, well, guess what? You have to pay for that. Otherwise, we're not going to allow your development to come into our city. So versus, taking a shotgun or a rifle to how we address this, it's a nuanced issue, but let's be smart. Let's have new development come in, but in a way that benefits our city and doesn't hurt our infrastructure. Let's study it. Let them study it, and then tell us what those impacts are. And if there are impacts, let them pay for it.
So I believe I heard the full question. And I would say that I agree. I mean, if a developer is coming in, first and foremost, a developer is not going to propose a project in a municipality if they're not going to reap a benefit from it, if they're not going to make money off of it. A lot of times, oftentimes, a developer will look to get at least a 15% profit off of their project before they move forward. So if it's a $100 million project, you do the math. So absolutely, they don't need pilots. You're making a lot of money as it is. You don't need a subsidy. And then if it's a residential development, you're going to continue to make money, because each year that's factored into their pro forma, you're going to have increases in rent. So they don't need a pilot. That's my position. I maintain that position. I'm not going to budge from that position. Now, yes, if a developer is going into an area where, first of all, we did have a plan. We did have a plan that was approved by the EPA to fix the sewers. I mentioned that before. I don't know what happened when the administrations changed, but there was a plan, and there was an engineer working with the EPA to move forward with that plan. So again, I don't know what happened, but when developers come in, absolutely, studies have to be, and that's the case now. There are studies that are prepared. The developer pays for those studies and pays for the city's consultants to review those studies. But we need to take it a step further, like Ed said, like Leslie said, call it a development impact fee, et cetera. If they're going to be developing in an area where the sewers need to be repaired and or replaced, that has to be the responsibility of the developer. Just know that this is done in every municipality, whether it's a new municipality, because believe it or not, there are still municipalities that are being incorporated. There's a place in Georgia that was just incorporated less than 10 years ago. So we're not used to seeing that because, you know, we've been settled for years here on the East Coast. But no municipality pays for all of their infrastructure because they can't afford it. They make the developers do it when the developers come in, whether it's a residential developer, whether it's a commercial developer, whether it's retail. This is what they're required to do. And that's what we have to make the developers do here in Mount Vernon. No more pilots. We need you to pay the fee.
Okay, both of you sound very good. You probably could work together very well. You don't even need anybody. You guys on this thing, we'll move it forward. All right. The last question I see here is our resources are extremely stretched and as hard as it is, we cannot bear more. Our police department has become under fire for corruption. And there has been crimes, and they say more shootings in the city. What do you do to enhance the fire, police, and sanitation? Might as well put in the DPW capacity in the city. Much of the equipment is outdated, broken, or more have moved in, or more people, I guess they mean, have moved in. This already put strain on the equipment, which is they feel falling apart.
One of the first things we can do, I believe, and it's a part of what I've been saying, a part of my platform for our public safety personnel, police, fire, DPW. Number one, they need new contracts. Now, again, that's negotiated by the administration, but I would be an advocate for the workers to make sure that they get a contract. It's unacceptable. They've been working without a contract, I believe, for 4 or 5 years now without a new contract. So morale is low. We see that witnessed in the number of resignations in the police department. They're fleeing Mount Vernon in droves. I spoke to some firefighters. I was told they're next. I spoke to DPW personnel. They're unhappy. They said the morale is low. So let's address that by making sure that they're being paid and being paid well. I don't believe in defunding the police. I'll just say that. I believe in greater investment in public safety. So, because when you think about it, I mean, as I say, it's 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. We're wasting our resources. When we hire police officers, we have to pay the academy to train them. And then when they're on the job, they go for more training to keep up with the latest tactics and things like that. And then only to get all that training and take it to another municipality. So they may be going to Sleepy Hollow, or they may be going to Tarrytown. Sleepy Hollow and Tarrytown don't have to budget for new police officers for training because they know they can get them from Mount Vernon after 3 to 5 years. Why are we wasting those resources? Let us pay them the proper wage, the proper pay, proper salaries, so that they will stay in Mount Vernon, but obviously the good ones. So any bad apples, they should be investigated by the proper authorities, whether it's the Westchester County DA, whether it's the DOJ, and absolutely removed. But I think that we need to have greater investment in public safety with regard to the equipment that they use. We have to bond. We have to bond for that, but we don't have credit. So in the meantime, we need to be innovative. Again, how do we do that? Grants. And even the developers coming in addition to paying for things like repairing or replacing the sewers where they are. Maybe they're putting into a fund to help to buy new vehicles for police and fire and DPW. These are all things that we can be doing when you have the right people at the table that have these innovative ideas and really want to get it done.
So there's one last question from the chat, and it's directed at Mr.
I'm gonna just, I get two, the 4, 5, but it's 2 on taxes. So when you finish that, we haven't talked about tax, so 2 on tax after the,
Okay, so this one is directed at Ed. Ed, what would you say to voters who have concerns about your possible susceptibility to bribes from developers? That's from Brenda Croft. Yeah.
The days of developers raping the city of Mount Vernon is over. I am not doing this, and I'm not running for council for any economic benefit. The hours are too long and the pay is too low to make that compromise. I'm doing this because I really believe the people of Mount Vernon have suffered under bad governance for quite a while. And the same thing happened in Yonkers last decade, the same thing happened in New Rochelle. So if you look at our peer cities, you see what the benefit of proper governance can do. And so I believe that I bring a skill set along with Daniel Brown and Caitlin Gleason, and we bring a spirit of collaboration to bring correct governance back to Mount Vernon. So I swear to you, I would never even think about taking a bribe from developers. I love suits. The suit that I don't like is orange and black. So I have no interest in taking a bribe from anyone. What I do have an interest in, though, is making sure we take politics out of governance, that we work collaboratively without ego. I look forward to working with Danielle and Caitlin on council to make sure that we do move our city forward.
All right, John?
okay, just the one quick one. I don't know if Lauren wants anything to say about that, but it is being said that Mount Vernon is or is going bankrupt. What is your idea to turn this around?
Okay, well, I'll start that one and I'll piggyback off the last question before I begin. I absolutely won't take a bribe. I didn't even want to take campaign donations from the big developers because a lot of times, and we see it all over the country, when the special interest groups, the lobbyists, et cetera, are funding your campaign, they want something in return. And I'm not against development. I just don't want one to think that I'm obligated to approve their project because they made a campaign contribution to me. So I've accepted contributions from, it's a grassroots campaign from the people of Mount Vernon, also putting a lot of my money into the campaign, the primary and now in the general. And definitely have people that are willing to support residents, business owners as well, because they're stakeholders here at Mount Vernon. Now, to answer the question about, I'm sorry, what was the question, John? I apologize.
Okay. It is being said Mount Vernon is or is going bankrupt. They were bankrupt already or almost there. What is your idea to turn this around?
Yes. So, yes, Mount Vernon is running out of money. As I said earlier, if it weren't for the ARP monies that we received earlier this year, Mount Vernon would have probably run out of money already. A combination of many factors: overspending, not budgeting properly, a lot of lawsuits. There was just a lawsuit that was awarded to a business owner here. Unfortunately, business owners are suing because of the unfair treatment they're experiencing. I think by the time his attorney's fees are paid, I think it's going to be about $4 million, maybe $5 million. You have Keela Tennis that the insurance company is not going to pay because it was a willful act committed by an elected official. So they're not going to pay it.
Is that tennis court?
Yes,
Yes.
tennis courts, Keela Tennis. Yes, he's still suing us. I was told he would have negotiated or settled with the city, but that time has passed. So we're looking at many more lawsuits, overspending. Even during the pandemic, I witnessed overspending in the city. There were raises given, $20,000, $30,000 raises in the pandemic. That was unacceptable when we didn't have the money. So what we need to do, as I said before, grow our, and also there's been theft, probably. I'll say mismanagement, because we have a former corporation counsel that was convicted for requesting monies to be paid out of the water department to the former mayor's legal defense team for a personal legal matter. That was unacceptable. Now, if the former mayor was being sued in his capacity, or he was in court in his capacity as mayor, or even previously as a council person, then the city could have paid for his defense, but not for a personal matter. So we have a corporation counsel, and the monies from the former mayor, Wallace, after Thomas, and the former law department corporation counsel, they had filed a lawsuit to get the monies back. They did get some monies back, about 10% of what was taken from the water department. And then the new administration came in and canceled all the lawsuits. I don't understand. We could have gotten some of that money back. Why would we do that? In the meantime, what we also need to do is we need to increase the tax base. Bottom line, we need to increase the tax base. We need to get more businesses in Mount Vernon that are going to pay their fair share of property taxes. And if it's a retail establishment, they can have they'll be paying retail tax. If we have a hotel, they'll be paying the transfer tax. You got to have the right people that want to do it. That's not looking for self-gain, not looking for money or celebrity status, but really just want to work for the people and make Mount Vernon better. I'm that person. And I will just wrap it up by saying that we also need to be careful how we spend, how we budget and spend. Let us have proper budgets, not overstating revenues, not counting one-time revenues. That's not what we need to do. We also need to be careful. I hope the administration and the council are in preparation of the budget, taking into account that we're going to have a new target in Yonkers. So some of the commerce we got here on Sanford is going to be redirected to Yonkers. Are they budgeting for that? Are they saying we're going to probably have to decrease the sales tax revenue in our budget because we're not probably going to get the same amount because we're going to have we're going to have competition? Are they taking into account these factors in the budget? Proper budgeting, and let's spend within our means. Also, get as many grants as we can to do a lot of the things that we need to do. That would be my approach for being a fiscally responsible council person here in Mount Vernon.
So there was a question asked, the last question I'm going to take in the chat. This is to both of you, Ed and Lauren. Should it be revealed that the current controller has committed financial malfeasance against the city of Mount Vernon, would either of you support criminal investigation and prosecution of it?
I'll go first.
All right.
Yes. Yes. It's just a really quick factoid. Mount Vernon's a city of about 74,000 people, and our budget's $130 million. The city of New Rochelle is about 85,000 people, around the same size, and their annual budget's $240 million. So we have to grow our city, because the reason why we don't have the services that our peer cities do is because we don't generate the tax revenue that they do. And if we have a comptroller, getting back to your question, Joe, if we have a comptroller that's taking our limited resources, it's bad enough the damage that she did with her incompetence. And I don't think we even understand the depth of what that means to the city, but we will next year. But if it wasn't just incompetence, but there was malfeasance and theft, then yeah, she should definitely be brought up on criminal charges, for sure.
If there was malfeasance and theft, she will be brought up on charges. That's the bottom line. If that's the case, she will be brought up on charges by the Westchester County DA. Maybe even, well, but definitely by the Westchester County DA. So yes, I mean, if that's the case, she will be brought up on charges. But again, we need to make sure that we're budgeting properly, because I do know that from my time working in the city, Mount Vernon was running out of money. So if some bills were not being paid, number one, you have to, you have lines in your budget. For example, this is the line for snow removal. This is the line for equipment. If your line has been overexpended, you have to get a transfer into that line. You can't expend what you don't have. So we also need to make sure that we, as whatever department it is, council people, whatever department, that we are also managing our budgets properly and making sure we have enough money in the line to pay certain items, and also not overspending so that when the bill comes, the bill can be paid. So we don't say, oh, we don't have enough money. Mount Vernon is not the federal government. We can't just print money and spend. We can't do it. We have to live within our means.
All right, John?
Yeah, Rob, you said you had a question?
I have a question. Is it okay if I ask one question to Ed? John, would that be okay?
Just
Yeah,
that? Okay.
Okay, Lauren just mentioned a few moments ago that she's not accepting any funds, any campaigns from developers because she feels it could be unethical. Are you or your team members collecting any funds from from the developers that are doing the developing in Mount Vernon? Are you accepting campaigns?
So my campaign, I self-funded to the tune of about $25,000. But we have received contributions too. We have a lot of support throughout the community from local businesses, business
I'm
owners.
specifically asking about the developers that we're all questioning about, the developers that are building all these buildings. I don't care about small business. I'm specifically asking about the developers that are working to put up tall buildings here. Are you and your team taking contributions from them?
Right. So yes, we have received contributions, including from developers, if that's your question.
Thank you.
Joe, that's it. There's no more questions. We're finished.
That's it.
Both these they came across very well, and I can't speak for the other two people because the other people are not here. I hope whoever is listening here, they tell their friends what they saw and what they think of the two of you, and hopefully, one person talks to 10, and you get more people out to vote. We need a larger number of people voting in the city. It's ridiculous, like 10-15% of the residents that are eligible to vote wind up voting. It's just pathetic. Anyway, who wants to say a few words? Let's keep it short. Just to say why you are the one person that should be on that council.
Sure. I'll start off. I want to thank Lauren for her candidacy. Stepping out like this is not easy. It's not easy at all. And I will tell her publicly, regardless of who wins, let's talk afterwards, because there are things that I know that you don't, and there's a whole lot of things you know that I don't. And it's important that whoever wins, we're all moving forward for the city of Mount Vernon. But this race is actually bigger than just city council. Again, for the Democratic nomination, people made their decision back in June. And they thankfully decided that myself, along with my running mates, Daniel Brown and Caitlin Gleason, would be the Democratic nominees for city council. And right now, it's not just the city of Mount Vernon looking at this race, it's the entire county, right? You have a governor's race next year. And as Westchester goes, probably the state's gonna go. So it's really important that we have a united, strong Democratic front to make sure that when that race comes up, people are looking at our county and then looking at our city saying, well, where is the Democratic Party in all this? Were they unified? Were they strong? Or were they fractured as they headed into the general election in a couple of days? And one last point. There's a bunch of great candidates. I have, I think, some good qualifications. Lauren has some good qualifications. Danielle, Caitlin have some great skills. But what's been missing in council, what's really been missing is collaboration. It's not even that the current council members aren't good people. I know several of them, and they're all very good people, very good people with good skills. But it's the lack of collaboration that has hurt our city. So I'm very proud to be running on our slate, backed by any number of local elected officials, including Assemblyman Gary Pretlow, Chairman of the Democratic Party, Reginald Lafayette, County Executive George Lattimore, Senator Jamal Bailey, Mayor Sean Patterson, former Mayor Ernie Davis, because they understand and know that even though we bring skills to the table, we plan to lead without ego, because that's what the city needs. Collaboration and people that are just gonna show up, do the work, and work with the other branches of government, work with our comptroller, work with our mayor to move our city forward. There's no disagreement as to what the problems are. We know what the problems are. Lauren and I have said pretty much the same thing for the past hour and a half. We don't have a comp plan. We don't have a capital plan. We have issues with our sewage system. We have to make Mount Vernon more green. There's no mystery as to what needs to happen. The question is how, and I would argue with you humbly that has to be done through collaboration. We've seen what infighting and the lack of collaboration has cost our city in terms of not movement, in terms of lawsuits. Those days have to stop. And it stops if we work with each other. And then if we're working with the other branches of government, and if we're working with the county. So again, my name is Ed Poteet. I'm your Democratic nominee for City Council. I am running with Daniel Brown and Caitlin Gleason, your other Democratic nominees for City Council. And we look forward to hearing from you in 9 days, or if you want to vote early. And I hope that you would vote for us, 11A, 12A, and 13A. Please vote for the Democratic Party, Railway all the way. Thank you so much.
Again, thank you for coming this evening. Before you talk, Lauren, Joe and Rob, I see, I know you raised your hand before. Leslie raised her hand. Should we take him, or should we say?
Yeah, I'd like
questions
to hear
are
from
over?
Leslie.
And
I always like to hear from Leslie.
and you opened your comments by saying that neither of you guys that ran on your slate are politicians, but already excuse me, but you are already sounding like one when you mention all the public officials who are supporting your candidacy, especially Chairman Lafayette, who actually was not for your party and actually ran a slate against your party. So it just seems a little disingenuous to bring those characters into play right now to show a show of force. Those guys, they go along whichever way the wind blows. So I wouldn't put my chips there.
So Leslie, let me just answer that question.
Absolutely, yes.
They don't go wherever the wind goes. They go where the people go. And on June 23rd, when the people voted from myself, Caitlin Gleason, and Daniel Brown. To be clear, now the Democratic Party, Lauren was on that slate, but then the people said for the Democratic nomination, we have decided to vote for Ed Poteet, Daniel Brown, and Caitlin Gleason.
Right, and you are correct there, but you brought in the officials as if they supported you and backed you. No, they just went the way the people went, but not necessarily that they backed you originally. All right, that put aside, you were very well spoken during this session, and I agree with a lot of the positions that you're taking. And also, I believe Lauren was very well spoken, and I am in support of a lot of the positions that she's taken. Also, one thing that Lauren did mention is that this is the time right now for all of Mount Vernon, Democrats, Independents, Republicans, all to vote. This is no longer a primary. So right now, it is up to every individual to hear each candidate out, just like we did tonight, and hear what their answers are to our problems that we face here at Mount Vernon. And again, I believe you spoke very well tonight. I believe Lauren spoke very well as well, and I wish you both luck.
I don't know why pictures up there. I agree with exactly what Leslie. Both of you came across very well, and if you live up to what you're saying, I think both of you make a great city council, not candidate, over a member. And Lauren, to answer that question, no matter what two people win on the other team, if that happens and you win, are you going to be able to work as well with those two people?
Yes, John. And I'm going to say that I can collaborate, but there's a difference between collaboration and groupthink. And I would be a person who would be a collaborator. And I'd be able to work not only with whoever else is elected from the other two, but for also the other two who are currently on the council, Lisa Copeland and Derek Thompson, because they are council people as well as the administration, the mayor, the comptroller, and all the department heads, because I'm the one that has a track record of being able to do that already. I worked for or with 4 different administrations. I count Ernie Davis's administration twice because there were 5. Ernie Davis, Clinton Young, Richard Thomas, and then Andre Wallace. But like I said, I count Ernie twice because he was reelected. So I have that track record of being able to work with them and their administrations, their commissioners, et cetera, in addition to other government agencies, county agencies, state, et cetera. I have the track record of already being able to do that. So you can look at what I've done, look at my experience, and know that a vote for me would be a vote to help Mount Vernon move in the right direction, because we've been moving in the wrong direction for far too long. I'm one who's ready to lead on day one. Won't need much training because we don't have time, quite frankly. We don't have time. We could run out of money. I mean, again, we're going to get another 21 million that will help us, but that is specific to COVID and any loss during COVID, not necessarily for regular operations. So I know that I'm ready to lead on day one. I believe I'm the best one for the job. Again, this is the general election, so everyone can vote. Democrats, Republicans, independents, conservatives, those who are unaffiliated, and the Working Families Party registrants. Everyone can vote now. And it goes to what I said before, increasing engagement and participation. So I'm doing that now by running, because I'm affording those folks the opportunity, even the Democrats that didn't vote in the primary, the opportunity to do that now. So I'm showing you now that I'm being engaging and collaborating with all, including the stakeholders who are the most important ones here in the city of Mount Vernon, because we are elected to serve them. And that's who I am, a public servant, knowing that it's not for self-gain, but just to help this community. I'm Lauren Carter, running for city council. I'm a Democrat running on the Working Families Party line. I'm on 11D. George Latimer is on 7D. Tim Iadoni is on 8D. And it is important that we keep Latimer and make sure that Memorial Field is finished, because his administration is committed to making sure that that's done. And you can vote for him on the Working Families Party line. And I will just wrap it up by saying to Ed's point about, yes, we need collaboration, but we also need people that are willing to do the right thing. Willing to do the right thing. I mean, we already have problems now on the library board because people are not willing to do the right thing. Now, are we going to bring that also now to the city council? Yes, we're looked at as the laughing stock because of things like that as well. Not just the infighting, but also because we're not doing what's right for Mount Vernon. I urge you to vote Lauren Carter so we can change that. Thank you for this time. And I'm sorry, there were some questions that were not answered. I saw in the chat. Feel free to contact me, lauren@citycouncil.com, and I'll just put my number here in the chat.
And thank you very much. Both of you did a fantastic job.
Thank
And
you,
I think not only Lauren could be work with you, but also Dr. Reverend Morton. I think both of you be able to work with him very well and hopefully get the city moving in the right direction. Thank you. Thank everyone for attending, and I hope to talk with everyone soon.
Good night, everyone. Good
Good
night,
night.
everyone.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you for the
Good night.
opportunity.